Okay, so hopefully this should now be full screen. Right. Okay, guys, do you want to have a look at my screen? What I'm doing at the moment, I am broadcasting an Apple Mac across the network. Why? It's because I've got the. No, it's not. Much more efficient than a PC. With VirtualBox Manager running on here. Because I want to show you some of the details around some of the things that you can actually check and do. A Mac has something called an activity monitor, which is very similar to Task Manager and PC, but it actually shows you what your memory pressure is, etc., as a bit more of a detail. So what I've got here are 3 Windows 7 machines, Virtual 3D 1, 2, and 3. If you have a look, there's a few differences between them. 3D01 has acceleration set as 2D video, 25 gig hard drive. Virtual 3D02 does not. All of them have the same base memory of 1024 megabytes or 1 gigabyte and a video memory of 128 meg. I'm going to start with Virtual 3D01. So what I'm now doing is I'm, as you'll see, we'll have a look at the memory pressure. As Windows starts, you'll see suddenly that the cached files is reducing in memory. That's because this is used a different way of doing memory on a Mac, as Windows 7 is now loading in the background. Now the password on here I believe was 1, as in the number 1. The memory pressure has gone up, but the underlying operating system has actually dealt with that by reducing how much memory it stores in its data. The Virtual 3D01 has picked up that the computer I'm currently set up on, the Mac, is actually plugged into a Wi-Fi network, not the standard college network. Therefore, it's asking me, as if it was connected directly to the system, what do I want to treat this as? No, I want to turn that off. I'm going to set this as a work network so that I can say this is a trusted network. And this computer is now on the network. Now, this computer itself is fully functional as Windows 7, but also you may notice as I move my mouse out of the window, it then moves on to the Mac again. I don't have to press buttons constantly to say, right, release the mouse or anything like that. And the reason for that is because it's got virtual media extensions installed. If I have a look, you can see what we can do is we can install the guest edition CD image. Now, we should do this because this hasn't been updated in about 2 or 3 years. And if I go onto my computer, you'll see this virtual CD drive. It's not a real CD drive, and it's got this program guest edition. So we're going to install that. And you should update this as often as you update VirtualBox as part and parcel of your dealing with the virtualized system. So wait for that to install. These icons at the bottom, by the way, allow you to have extra information about what your current computer is doing, or your virtual computer is doing. And you can see there's network connections, if there's USB connected. I've actually got a share folder set up, which means that there's a virtual folder which I can access from my virtual machine that's actually on the physical machine as well, so I can transfer files between the two. Shows me what video memory I've got. I can capture the video straight away. This actually gives me information about the type of virtualization that I'm using and what the execution cap, what percentage I'm maximum allowed for my processor. So this is going to probably take quite a while to install. There's experimental direct 3D support, so I'm not going to put that on for now because it's probably not going to work on something that hasn't got DirectX installed. We're going to install some other drivers. And if you take a look while this is installing at the memory being used at the moment, just over about 6.5 gigabytes is being used by the entire system. But 1.5 gigabytes of that is cached files. So as I increase the number of virtual machines running on this computer, it'll actually decrease the amount of cached files to allow me to use that. So once we've got this one machine running, I'm going to try, let's always trust. This is Windows 7 always trusting. I'm going to start powering on a couple of other machines. So I've now got all 3 virtual machines running on the same computer. This is because these were running last time I had my Mac on. Right, if you now have a look at the memory usage, as Windows starts on both of these, it doesn't instantly start using a whole gigabyte. It's trying to be clever in how much it's using. But you can see on VirtualBox, as a virtual machine, it's actually using 1.2 gigabytes, even though it said it's only supposed to use 1 gigabyte of RAM. Why is that? Any ideas? I'm going to reboot this one now. The reason is it's got to have some video memory as well. So 128 meg are being used for video memory, and that's just RAM on my PC that I'm having to use, or in this particular case, the Apple Mac. That shouldn't be running either. I don't know why that's installed. And if I wanted to, I could. Hold on. No. Cancel, come on, no. You can see that the computer itself is actually starting to slow down because of having to run 3 systems. If we start having a look at the CPU, actually the CPU load still isn't up to as much as 100% in total. You can see some are using more than others now, and it's starting to use a bit more CPU time. But it's actually more efficient to run virtual versions of Windows on a Mac than it is virtual versions of Windows on a Windows PC. Because the Mac underlying operating system is actually very good at managing memory and CPU time, and is actually designed for this purpose. It's built on Unix, which is a much more efficient operating system for having multiple users and multiple systems all running at the same time. So we're now ending up with, let's have a look and see how our memory's doing. Memory used now, we're getting closer to the full 8 gig being used. It's having to compress quite a bit of memory as well. That slows the system down. But let's log in with these 2 computers as well. And then once we've got all of these 3 computers logged in, this one's still updating, we can do something else that's quite clever. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to, this is obviously on a different computer to the one that I'm actually physically on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the actual virtual machines as if they were physical computers. So in my documents, I can go to a this is a remote desktop connection. We just let's call this virtual PC 3D01, I think it is it? Something like that. Let's edit that. Let's have a quick look and see what these are called. So virtual 3D01. So let's start find virtual 3D. So 03 is actually logged on. The username is student. Allow me to save credentials. Let's save as. Let's call this virtual 3D. Virtual 3D. 3D03. So it's going to say, well, I'm going to connect that now. So what I'm now going to do is you'll see, hopefully it will do a remote connection to the, if it can find it on the network, which it should be able to do. If I go now to this computer and check it has got a network connection, Network is connected, so that's working okay. Right, let's have a look and see if we can find. Okay, so let's see if we can just find on the network the virtual PC. And goes to network. So let's see if we can find virtual. There you go, virtual 3D01, virtual 3D03 are on the network. So that's virtual 3D03. Let's make sure I'll try again. See if it can find it this time. If it can't, it might be that the remote desktop connection has been turned off on that virtual PC. Oh, there we go. It's because it's not been set up as a network yet to say if it's trusted or not, because it's a new network. So let's connect that one. Just double check by going to the computer properties that it has actually got networking installed and is allowed to access remotely. So remote settings. So this is a virtual machine sitting in a virtual machine on a virtual. Here we go. Allow remote assistance connections. So let's give it another try. There we go. It's now working. Now it's actually been told what the network is, and I can now access that virtual computer, which is a virtual PC, as if I was sitting at it, even though it's actually now running on a Mac and it's running inside VirtualBox. But for all intents and purposes, this actually looks like I'm running a normal computer. Now, what's really impressive about these computers, it isn't the same version of 3DS you guys use, but this is exactly how we used to run 3DS Max on 6 computers, just using 2 Macs. So you had the virtual computer able to run Autodesk. It's a little bit slower than you might normal computer would be. But it's getting there, especially if you've got all 3 running at the same time on the Mac. But the Mac is able, if we ever go back to the Mac and see what the Mac's currently doing, you see at the moment this now says I'm logged in remotely, so I can't do anything about it. Let's log in on that one. And virtual 3D02, let's tell it there's a work network on there as well. So we can connect that one to the network.
Next Thursday, I'll use 4 people with the programmers from the level 2s, year 3, year 2s.
So what
on time? Thursday, it'd be that first morning session when I got a class that don't fit in.
They can be in here, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
It'd be the programmers then.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, if we take a look now at the memory, we're only at 7.17 gigs used out of our 8 gig, because if you think about it, these are using 1.2 gig each, it's 8 gig on the system, so this was actually using slightly less. That's probably because it's not using the same graphics card chip, if you like, as the others are. But we are actually capable of running all 3 computers without too much slowdown on the main system. As you can see, I can see all the different computers that are on this computer as well. So it's quite possible to run virtual machines and use them as if they were normal desktop PCs. Graphically intensive programs like 3ds Max are not going to like just 128 meg of video RAM anyway, let alone anything else. But they do work and they do run. Certainly office-based applications and things have no problem at all. So a virtual PC could be really utilised well in an environment that we could have really low quality computers in here that are running old solar-on processors with remote desktop connection, and actually all the work would then be done by a single Mac. It could run, well, as I say, a classroom of 10 people, we could run it with 3 Macs and probably reduce the cost of the entire computer system in the environment. Oh, license expired. There's a surprise. So I probably can't run it at the moment without doing some other work. As well as being able to run it remotely on a local network, I can install TeamViewer, and I can actually then run that over the internet as well. So I can access a Windows 7 PC even from on my iPad at home, and that Windows 7 PC doesn't even exist in itself. It's just running as a program sat on a Mac. So it's, I mean, here we go. It's going to have a lot of updates that need to run on this. So let's go through the process of actually managing a virtual PC that hasn't been run for a long time. So let's start with, I think the virtual editions is just going to run in the background. Standard Windows update, first of all. Now, whether this will run on the college network or not, I don't know. No, it's Windows update. So check for updates. Let's see if we can get any security updates and things, because at the moment this is a very insecure version of Windows 7 that's running on this computer. If we take a look while we're doing that at the hard disk itself, let's do some standard management. It's currently got 9 gigs free of a 25 gig hard drive. Let's run some tools. Let's start with an error check. And it will run it as if it was a physical hard drive. It can't, because it needs checking off next time. But we can at least check and analyse the disk and see if it needs defragmenting. Yeah, so you can't connect to Windows updates through the college network, unfortunately. But if I was to then plug that into my home network, I can get that installed and running. I might want to add certain extra features, like some important ones, like there's no network protection at the moment, there's no antivirus or anything, because this version of Windows 7 hasn't got any of that installed. As you can see, defragmenting is showing that it's 0% fragmented, so I don't need to worry too much about it. But one of the most useful things about this sort of virtual PC, if you like, is that I can just move it from one computer to another. I can take this and have it running then on my laptop, and I can then do other things with it, and then transfer the whole entire computer over to another computer really quickly and easily. Okay. So, is there anyone who still doesn't know how to install a virtual machine or anything like that into VMware or anything like that? See, Windows Defender is out of date, but I don't know if it'll actually let me install. Let's have a look on Virtual 3D01 is now running. I wonder if that will let me run Windows Update. Probably not. Let's give it a try and see. So this one I can, let's install guest edition CD image on that one, so we can update all the items. But these sorts of updates are the sorts of things that you guys need to be logging on your own systems. Okay, so doing things like updating the guest editions, updating Windows to make sure that that's up to date as it should be. All these sorts of tools. Windows Defender is the very, very old version.
Does it slow down the computer?
What, to use a virtual machine? Yes, because it's using the processor and the memory of your current computer. So it's obviously going to have an impact on your main computer as you're running it. I mean, you can see here the CPU usage. The majority of the CPU usage now is the virtual machines running for on this Mac. It's not slowed down the Mac because the Mac's very good at it, as I say. Windows isn't so good at stopping the slowdown from happening. But as long as you limit your virtual machine to only use a single core, only use so much RAM, etc., you should actually be quite okay with it running concurrently with your main computer, especially while you're doing testing, etc. Windows 7 used to have a version of Windows XP built in as a virtual machine that you could access automatically. So there's all sorts of uses of virtualization just generally in the industry as well. Yeah, I can install VirtualBox in that virtual system. As I was saying, I think to Tom, the most I've ever managed to get done is 4. Yeah, a virtual system and a virtual system and a virtual system and a virtual system. I had to start with, I think I had 6 gig on my first virtual machine. Yeah, 6 gig, 5 gig, 4 gig, 3, no, it's 5 gig, 4 gig, 3 gig, 2 gig. No, I ended up with 128 meg. I was running Windows 7 with 128 meg of RAM on the minimum computer, and
So
then
if you
built it
had-
back up.
16 gig of RAM. It's not.
Yeah, you could run a virtual machine inside a virtual machine inside a virtual machine. But, there's no real limit other than the fact it will completely hammer your CPU, because then you have to run like 16 virtual machines. If you can run 4 virtual machines, those 4 virtual machines could be 4 separate virtual machines, or one inside the other, inside the other, inside the other, and still have the same performance. Yeah, it depends how you decide to put it together. So it's really quite a good method of learning about this sort of thing, because in all honesty, this is the way that a lot of things in the industry are going, having these sort of ideas, having a virtual machine inside a virtual machine, or sorry, virtual machine inside a physical machine that you're then utilising, because it just helps with maintaining and I mean, for backing up this computer, for example, all I've got to do is have a copy of that hard drive on a separate machine. And then I've got backup, full backup. I haven't had to back up every single file, I haven't had to do any file analysis, it all just works. I can even have, technically speaking, the same instance of Windows 7 running on 2 separate networks. If it finds it on the same, if you have 2 machines running the same system on the same network, you can end up with Windows licensing issues. And you might have a separate license code that you have to apply. But you could just create a fresh version of Windows 7 and then have 26 copies of it running across the network. You just then change the license code on each one. So there's all as I said, there really is all sorts of things you can do. You can use USB devices within the item. So I could say I want my certain USB port, whichever one I want to do, to only work with this virtual machine. And then every instruction to the USB port gets ignored by my host computer and goes straight to that virtual machine instead. All those sorts of things are really, powerful tools, especially if you're doing things like checking for malware, checking for viruses, and wanting to build systems that allow you to do proper honeypots, etc., to find viruses even on the network, or even see if there's anyone naughty sniffing around your local network. Because if I install a virtual machine like this, which I can have logs in, I can check to see who's logging into it, who's trying to find all the drives that are built in, all that sort of thing. So is that YouTube in sort of a dark mode, night mode? Oh, didn't know it did that. That's really all I want to show you guys now, that it is physically possible to install virtual machines inside physical computers and have multiple machines running on a single host PC and still be able to utilise them as you want to. I'm just going to reboot these 2 computers as we speak. If any of you need to do any of your work in showing how these virtual computers are actually working as part of screenshots for any of this virtualization assignments, I've got the Mac here today on this computer, and there's also something, if you use something called VNC Viewer, I can, or if you use virtual desktop connections and things, I can get it so you can actually view these on your main computers and control them as you need to. Okay, so if you've got any questions or anything, let me know. If there's anything you want me to go through with you on how to install your own virtual machines or put together the screenshots you need for the assignments, let me know. Other than that, it's sort of off you go with the virtualization.